guys, it's Eliza, and today's book is going to be for both 7th and 8th grade. And you guys might have heard of this. It was made into a major motion picture film called, and it has the title of the book, Hidden Figures. It's about, let me read you the blurb. Before John Glenn orbited the Earth or Neil Armstrong walked on the Moon, a group of dedicated female mathematicians known as human computers used pencils, slide rules, and adding machines to calculate the numbers that would launch rockets and astronauts into space. Among these problem solvers were a group of exceptionally talented African American women. Originally math teachers in the South's segregated public schools, these gifted professionals answered Uncle Sam's call during the labor shortages of World War II. With new jobs at the fascinating high-energy world of the Langley Memorial Aeronautical Laboratory in Hampton, Virginia, they finally had a shot at jobs that would push their skills to the limits. Even as Virginia's Jim Crow laws required them to be segregated from their white counterparts, the women of Langley's all-black West Computing Group helped America achieve one of the things it desired most: a decisive victory over the Soviet Union in the Cold War and complete domination of the heavens. Starting in World War II and moving through to the Cold War, the civil rights movement and the space race, Hidden Figures follows the interwoven accounts of Dorothy Vaughan, Mary Jackson, Katherine Johnson, and Christine Darden, 4 African American women who participated in some of NASA's greatest successes. It chronicles their careers over nearly 3 decades as they faced challenges, forged alliances, and used their intellect to create their own lives, to change their own lives and their country's future. So I think this is a really interesting book that we're going to read today. And so I'm going to start with chapter 1, of course, which is A Door Opens. Melvin Butler, the personnel officer at the Langley Memorial Aeronautical Laboratory, had a problem, the scope and nature of which was made plain in a May 1943 telegram to the Civil Services Chief of Field Operations. This establishment has urgent need for approximately 100 junior physicists and mathematicians, 100 assistant computers, 75 minor laboratory apprentices, 125 helper trainees, 50 stenographers and typists, explained the massive. Every morning at 7 a.m., the bow-tie butler and his staff sprang to life, dispatching the staff station wagon to the local rail depot, the bus station, and the ferry terminal to collect the men and women, so many women now, each day more women, who had made their way to the lonely finger of land on the Virginia coast. The shuttle conveyed the recruits to the door of the laboratory service building on the campus of Langley Field. Upstairs, Butler's staff whisked them through the first day stations, forms, photos, and the oath of office. I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, so help me God. Thus installed, the newly minted civil servants fanned out to take their places in one of the research facilities' expanding inventory of their buildings, each already as full as a pod ripe with peas. No sooner had Sherwood Butler, the laboratory's head of procurement, set the final brick on the new building than his brother Melvin set about filling it with new employees. Closets and hallways, stockrooms and workshops stood as makeshift offices. Someone came up with the bright idea of putting 2 desks head to head and jury-rigged the new piece of furniture with a jump seat in order to squeeze 3 workers onto the space designed for 2. In the 4 years since Hitler's troops overran Poland, since American interests in the European war converged in an all-consuming conflict, the laboratory's complement of 500-odd employees at the close of the decade was on its way to 1,500. Yet the great groaning war machine swallowed them whole and remained hungry for more. The offices of the administration building looked out upon the crescent-shaped airfield. Only the flow of civilian-clothed people heading to the laboratory, the oldest output of the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, NACA, distinguished the low bricks building belonging to that agency from identical ones used by the U.S. Army Air Corps. The 2 installations had grown up together, the air base devoted to the development of America's military air power capability, the laboratory a civilian agency charged with advancing the scientific understanding of aeronautics and disseminating its findings to the military and private industry. Since the beginning, the Army had allowed the laboratory to operate on the campus of the airfield. The close relationship with the Army flyers served as a constant reminder to the engineers that every experiment they conducted had real-world implications. The double hangar, two 110-foot-long buildings standing side by side, had been covered in camouflage paint in 1942 to deceive enemy eyes and search for targets, its shady and cavernous interior sheltering the machines and their minders from the elements. Man in canvas jumping suits, often in groups, moved in trucks and jeeps from plane to plane, stopping to hover at this one or that like pollinating insects, checking them, filling them with gas, replacing parts, examining them, becoming one with them, and taking off for the heavens. The music of airplane engines and propellers cycling through the various movements of takeoff, flight, and landing played before sunrise until dark. Each machine sounds as unique to its minders as a baby's cry to its mother. Beneath the tenor notes of the engines played the bass roar of the laboratory's wind tunnels, turning on their demand hurricanes onto the planes, plane parts, model planes, and full-size planes. Just 2 years prior, with the storm clouds gathering, President Roosevelt challenged the nation to ramp up its production of airplanes to 50,000 per year. It seemed an impossible task for an industry that as recently as 1938 had only provided the Army Air Corps with 90 planes a month. Now, America's aircraft industry was a production miracle, easily surpassing Roosevelt's mark by more than half. It had become the largest industry in the world, the most productive, the most sophisticated, outproducing the Germans by more than 3 times and the Japanese by nearly 5. The facts were clear to all belligerents. The final conquest of the world came from the sky. For the flyboys of the Air Corps, airplanes were mechanisms for transporting troops and supplies to combat zones, armed wings for pursuing enemies, sky-high launching pads for ship-sinking bombs. They reviewed their vehicles in an exhaustive pre-flight checkout before climbing into the sky. Mechanics rolled up their sleeves and sharpened their eyes. A broken piston, an improperly locked shoulder harness, a faulty fuel tank light, any one of these could cost lives. But even before the plane responded to its pilot's knowing caress, its nature, its very DNA, from the shape to its wings to the cowling of its engine, had been manipulated, refined, massaged, deconstructed, and recombined by the engineers next door. Long before America's aircraft manufacturers placed one of their newly conceived flying machines into production, they sent a working prototype into the Langley laboratory so that the design could be tested and improved. Nearly every high-performance aircraft model the United States produced made its way to the lab for drag cleanup. The engineers parked the planes in the wind tunnels, making good of the air-disturbing services, bloated fuselages, uneven wing geometries. As prudent and as thorough as their own family doctors, they examined every aspect of the air flowing over the plane, making careful note of the vital signs. NACA test pilots, sometimes with an engineer riding at shotgun, took the plane for a flight. Did it roll unexpectedly? Did it stall? Was it hard to maneuver, resisting the pilot like a shopping cart with a bad wheel? The engineers subjected the airplanes to tests, capturing and analyzing the numbers, recommending improvements, some slight, others significant. Even small improvements in the speed and efficiency multiplied over millions of pilot miles added up to a difference that could tip the long-term balance of the war in the Allies' favor. Victory through air power! Henry Reed, engineer in charge of the Langley laboratory, crooned to his employees, the shibboleth a reminder of the importance of the airplane to the war's outcome. Victory through air power! The NACAites repeated to each other, minding each decimal point, poring over differential equations and pressure distribution charts until their eyes tired. In the battle of research, victory will be theirs. Unless, of course, Melvin Butler failed to feed the 3-shift-a-day, 6-day-a-week operation with fresh minds. The engineers were one thing, but each engineer required the support of a number of others: craftsmen to build the airplane models tested in the tunnels, mechanics to maintain the tunnels, and nimble number crunchers to process the numerical deluge that issued from the research. Lift and drag, friction and flow. What was a plane but a bundle of physics? Physics, of course, meant math, and math meant mathematicians. And since the last decade, mathematicians have meant women. Langley's first female computing pool, started in 1935, had caused an uproar among the men of the laboratory. How could a female mind process something so rigorous and as precise as math? The very idea, investing $500 on a calculating machine so it could be used by a girl. But the girls have been good, very good, better at computing, in fact, than many of the engineers, the men themselves grudgingly admitted. With only a handful of girls winning the title mathematician, a professional designation that put them on equal footing with an entry-level male employees. The fact that most computers were designed as lower-paid sub-professionals provided a boost to the laboratory's bottom line. But in 1943, the girls were harder to come by. Virginia Tucker, Langley's hand computer, ran laps up and down the East Coast searching for co-eds with even a modicum of analytical or mechanical skill, hoping for matriculating college students to fill the hundreds of open positions for computers, scientific aides, model makers, laboratory assistants, and yes, even mathematicians. She conscripted what seemed like an entire classes of math graduates from her North Carolina alma mater, the Greensboro College for Women, and hunted at the Virginia schools like Sweetbriar and Lynchburg, and the state teachers in college in Farmville. Melvin Butler leaned on the U.S. Civil Service Commission and the War Manpower Commission as hard as he could so that the laboratory might get priority on the limited pool of qualified applicants. He penned ads for the local newspaper, the Daily Press. Reduce your household duties. Women who are not afraid to roll up their sleeves and do jobs previously filled by men should call the Langley Memorial Aeronautical Laboratory, read one notice. Fervent pleas from the personnel department were published in the employee newsletter, Air Scoop. Are there members of your family or others you know who would like to play a part in gaining supremacy of the air? Have you friends of either sex who would like to do important work towards winning and shortening the war? With men being absorbed into the military and services, with women already in demand by eager employers, the labor market was as exhausted as the war workers themselves. A bright spot presented itself in the form of another man's problem. Philip Randolph, the head of the largest black labor union in the country, demanded that Roosevelt open lucrative war jobs to Negro applicants, threatening the summer of 1941 to bring hundreds of thousands of Negroes to the nation's capital in protest if the president rebuffed his demand. "Who the hell is this guy Randolph?" fumed Joseph Raw, the president's aide. Roosevelt blinked. A tall, courtly black man with Shakespearean diction and the stare of an eagle. Asa Philip Randolph, a close friend of Eleanor Roosevelt, head of the 35,000-strong Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. The porters waited on passengers in the nation's segregated trains, daily enduring prejudice and humiliation from whites. Nevertheless, these jobs were coveted in the black community because they provided a measure of economic stability and social standing. Believing that civil rights were inextricably linked to economic rights, Randolph fought tirelessly for the right of Negro Americans to participate fairly in the wealth of the country they had helped build. 20 years in the future, Randolph would address the multitudes on another march on Washington, then concede the stage to a young and charismatic minister from Atlanta named Martin Luther King, Jr. Later generations would associate the Black Freedom Movement with King's name, but in 1941, as the United States oriented every aspect of its society towards war for the second time in less than 30 years, it was Randolph's long-term vision and the specter of a march that never happened that pried open the door that would have been closed like a bank vault since the end of Reconstruction. With two strokes of a pen, Executive Order 8802, ordering the desegregation of the defense industry, and Executive Order 9346, creating the Fair Employment Practices Committee to monitor the national project of economic inclusion. Roosevelt primed the pump for a new source of labor to come into the type production process. Okay, I know that seems like a lot of just background information, but the next chapter, which I won't be reading because this is First Chapter Fridays, is about the main characters or the women in this story, the hidden figures. So it's not all just information like this, although the background information is very important for the rest of the book. So I hope you guys give this a read. It is an amazing movie too, if you're more of a moving person, but again, this is a book show. So if you liked that and you definitely like aerospace engineering, stuff like that, then go check this book out. And it's really, really good. So read it, read it, read it.